Hey everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha, and today I'm going to be talking to you about all of the books that I read in the month of July. So I had 16 books going in the month of July, and I did finish all of them but 3. One of them, hopefully I will finish this month. The other 2 I will be carrying on throughout the rest of this year and some of next. So I will mention those, but I'm very excited to talk to you guys about these books today. I had some pretty good ones that I read in the month of July, and so let's just go ahead and jump into it. First, I want to start with the 4 books that are like nonfiction reads for this month. These are my Christian nonfiction books that I've started. Some of them I finished, some of them I'm carrying over. The one that I finished is called Start From Here, A Guide to Meeting God Wherever You Are by Ness Cannon. I saw Abigail from Abigail's Cup of Tea recommend this book, and so I knew I wanted to pick it up. It is from Hosanna Revival Company if you're interested, and it is just a really beautiful book. It is a cloth-bound leather book, and it is kind of like a daily devotional, but you can do it in like 6 weeks, 6 days, 6 months. I don't know, however you want to do it, just however much time you want to spend in this. So this is good for both new Christians as well as seasoned Christians. So this was a really good resource. I'm not going to be rating any of these books. I'm just going to share them with you, but I did finish that one. And then I'm also continuing reading Rooted by Banning Liebscher. This is an advanced reader copy that my husband got a few years ago. He read it and I read it, and I wanted to reread it. I don't know why. It was just calling to me to like reread this book. The subtitle is The Hidden Places Where God Develops You. And yeah, I just really enjoy this book. I feel like it's got a lot of meat in it. When I read a Christian nonfiction book, I want to make sure that I'm getting a lot out of it. I don't like a lot of fluff. I like, honestly, like some hard stuff, some hard truths sometimes. And this one has a lot of really good things in it. Banning Liebscher is the pastor of Jesus Culture in California, in case you're curious. But yeah, I'm about 99 pages into this one, so about this far of my reread, and I'm taking it kind of slow, but I'm really excited to be going through this one again. I would recommend it. It was a 5-star read the first time that I read it, and it's also going really good this time. Then I have 2 devotions that I'm reading through, so this one I won't finish until probably like summer of next year. This is My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. This is one of the books that is like one of the best-selling books, like second to the Bible. This has just sold like millions and millions of copies, and this is one of the best devotionals of all time, and I would agree with that. This is a book that I have revisited multiple times. This is a newer copy because I feel like every time I get a copy of my own, I end up handing it off to a friend. Oswald Chambers has some really, really good hard truths, not fluffy devotionals for every day, but stuff that will really make you think, and I really appreciate that. This was put together by his wife, Biddy, I believe. Because he actually passed away, and she just like took a bunch of his sermons or sermon notes and kind of compiled this. So definitely recommend it. They are done by day, like throughout the year. So like you've got each day of the year, and I really, really love this one. So I'll be continuing that, as well as Life and Obsessively Grateful, Undone by Jesus, Genuinely Happy and Not Faking It Through the Hard Stuff Kind of 100-Day Devotional by Lisa Harper. Lisa Harper is an author and a speaker that I really enjoy. I have not really read anything by her, but I've heard her speak multiple times. She is a very joy-filled woman, and I just love her presence and her heart and who she is as a Christian and as a person. So when I saw this devotional, I wanted to pick it up. And this one is more of a fluffy devotional. It does have some truths in it, but it is more fluffy in the sense that she is telling you life stories every day in the devotionals and then leaving you with some questions at the end that you can make it more of an interactive study. So this is also a good one. Again, I'm not going to rate like the devotionals or anything like that, but the way that hers are set up is just day 16, day whatever you're on, and then you read. Some of them are a page and a half. Some of them are just 2 pages, and then you have like 3 questions that you can answer to make it more interactive. But I just love getting a glimpse into her life anyways, because like I said, she's just such a joy-filled person. So those are the nonfiction books that I've been going through this month, and now we're going to go ahead and move into my regular fiction reads. First, let's talk about the 2 ARCs that I read this month. So I did receive both of these ARCs from NetGalley and the publisher, so thank you so much again, NetGalley, for just opening the opportunity for me to read. some graphic novels. I read a lot of graphic novels on NetGalley. There's not a lot that I like to read on a screen, and so graphic novels just tend to be better for me with the pictures and everything. So the first one that I read is called Saving Choopy. I've got the picture popped up here as well as the author's name because I can't remember it off the top of my head, but this one was such a pleasant surprise. It has a great like friendship and family dynamics, as well as some culture, like Puerto Rican culture, weaved into the story as well. And essentially this story is just about this girl who is trying to rescue a chupacabra from poachers. And let me just tell you, I have never been interested in any lizards or slimy, scaly, anything like that for pets. But I don't know, this chupacabra is really cute and cuddly looking. So I definitely think that a lot of people are going to fall in love with Choopy. The other arc that I read, I believe this one comes out in, because Saving Choopy is already out, but I believe that this next one comes out in November. It's called Ink Girls. And this one, I feel, it is labeled as middle grade, but I feel like it's more young adult or adult. It is a more wordy graphic novel, and I like my graphic novels to kind of be balanced a bit between the pictures telling the story just as much as the words, because I feel like this was just really long and a little bit much. But it is a very good and timely story about this group of girls who are standing up for truth and what's right, no matter the cost. This has a lot of like print work in it, as far as like censorship in newspapers and censorship in news in general, and just fighting against that. So if that is something interesting to you, I think this would be a good story for you to check out. I do have another arc that I have a physical copy of, and that is It Found Us by Lindsay Curry. I'm so grateful to the publisher and to Lindsay for getting this to me, because this is my 4th Lindsay Curry book. If you're somebody who likes heartwarming horror, so basically someone who likes a little bit of spooky and creepy, but you like it to wrap up with like kind of a sweet moment at the end, or you like moments in the story where you also say "aw" instead of "ah," so this would probably be good for you. Also, if you like historical elements in your stories, stories that are tied to like real historical events, obviously that's what that means, Keisha. But anyways, things that you may not have even heard of before. Lindsay Curry's a good author for that. So this is about this girl and her brother. They go to this cemetery to play this game of hide and seek, and a boy in the group goes missing. And the girl in the story is very much like a Harriet the Spy, Nancy Drew character. She really wants to be like a sleuth, and she is an adorable character in the story. I love how she comes together with her brother and her friend to try to figure out the mystery of what happened to the boy who went missing, as well as what is really going on in this graveyard. And yeah, it was just really interesting, and a piece of history also that I'd never heard about, so it was interesting to learn that. Again, this is my 4th Lindsay Curry book, and it may be my favorite. I need to read Scritch Scratch again just to make sure, but this may be my favorite of hers. So definitely check it out if any of that sounds interesting to you. I think I gave this one 4 stars. The rest of these are in no particular order, except that I'm saving my 2 favorites for the end. So next up for Christmas in July, that my friend Gwen from Lavender Mud over on Instagram and Gwendolyn Kinsinger here on YouTube, she was doing this Christmas in July readathon on her Patreon, and so this was the book that I read for that. This is Merry Xmas by Courtney Walsh. And I love Courtney Walsh's writing. She is a clean romance author, also a Christian romance author. I don't know if she's actually marketed as Christian anymore, because I know she's kind of veered a little bit into, I don't know if her stuff is like still shelved as Christian. It may be, I may be wrong. But just know that like if you are looking for a clean story with also a really good message, it's not like when I say it's Christian, like it's not overly faith driven or anything like that, but you could imply that if you wanted to in the story. This is just a really cute story. I really loved her other one, Across Country Christmas, and this one is about this girl who is trying to get a lead, or she wants to be the permanent host on Good Day Denver. So in order to do that, she's really trying to like market herself well, and she's like, what if I go back home to my small little hometown and we record all of the family Christmas traditions that I grew up with? Maybe that'll give me a good shot. So that's what she does. And when she gets home, she finds her ex-boyfriend is staying with her parents. That is the last thing she expected. And so this is a second chance romance, and I really, really, really liked this one. I honestly wish that I would have waited till closer to Christmas to read it, because I found out I'm not a Christmas in July girly. I want my seasons with my seasons. So I wish that I would have read it closer to Christmas, but this is a good recommendation if you are looking for one this Christmas to read. It is really, really good if you love those small town romances, the cute banter between characters. The main character did annoy me a little bit at times, because I feel like she wasn't being as open and as truthful as she could have been. So that did annoy me at times, but overall I really loved Marin and Max's characters. They were just absolutely adorable. I loved their chemistry together. I loved the messages in the stories. So definitely one to check out, especially if you're looking for like a Hallmark movie-esque kind of story. I gave this one 4 stars. The next book I have is Do I Know You by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund Broca. I read this one with my friend Jessie from Reading with Jess. This was a really fun buddy read. We were both intrigued by this one because it reminded me of After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I absolutely loved. They're both stories that deal with married couples and their like struggles in their marriage and how they handle that and come out better on the other end of it. I will say that I did like After I Do better than this one, and I think it's because After I Do went deeper than this one did. This one didn't go quite as deep as I wanted it to. But this is a story about Eliza and Graham. They are celebrating their 5-year wedding anniversary, but they're kind of feeling a little down in the dumpies. They are having a little bit of a rough patch in their marriage, and they're really needing to rekindle that fire. And so they go on this vacation, and while they're there, they're sitting at the bar, and this guest at this resort they're staying at, mistakes them for both being single and introduces them to each other. And so they end up starting this big game of role play, where they're like dating again, texting again, like all this cutesy little stuff. I did think this was a cute story, but again, I don't think it hit as hard as I wanted it to, and it felt kind of repetitive throughout. There was also a side story that was going on between Eliza and her sister that I felt like it was kind of misplaced a little bit in the story too. It does tie in, and it does make sense with the way she handles her relationships in her life, but I just felt like it was not necessary. The guest, I can't remember his name, but the guest that introduced them to each other, he's in the story throughout too, and he absolutely cracked me up. He was a great character to have in the story. So I was a little disappointed by this one though. It wasn't my favorite. I ended up giving it 3 stars. If you've read from this author duo before, you probably will like this one. I really liked having the perspective, because you do have Eliza's perspective and Graham's perspective, and you have a male and female author. So I liked that dynamic of seeing from both of their viewpoints and in both of their heads. But I don't know, again, it just kind of fell flat for me. It wasn't my favorite. It was still a good story. I still finished it and had a good time, but it's overall just a 3 star. Then I read my first Kirsten Modulin book, which I have to shout out my friend Gwen, because she talks about Kirsten Modulin all the time. She's had her on her podcast before. She really likes this author. She writes popcorn thrillers that are really short. This one is called Just Married, and I did rather enjoy this one. I buddy read this with my friend Zoe from Zoe Delaney, and Zoe reads popcorn thrillers all the time, but I think both of us were like so surprised by what kind of story this was. It was just a wild ride. It kind of gave me nostalgia for like watching scary movies in my childhood. This is about a married couple that goes off to this like retreat, and it's taking place, you have like, I think you have dual timelines in this. It's been a minute since I read this, but I think you have, yeah, so you have like different timelines, but you have like this main character, this main couple, that they're going on this honeymoon getaway. It's delayed, but they're going on this honeymoon getaway, and there's something fishy going on while they're there. There's like a stalker situation. There's some stuff going on with this cabin. It's basically a cabin in the woods they're staying in. This also takes place in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, and I'm from Tennessee. I've been to the Smokies a million times. So it kind of like gave me visuals and like just, I don't know, it was very nostalgic for like old scary movies. Also growing up going to the Smokies all the time, and also dealing with like real life fears in this. It was a lot. You also have like a past timeline where it's not like all the way through, but you're figuring out something that happened in the past that is important to the story. And yeah, I don't know. It was honestly, it's hard to describe. It was just a wild ride. I don't really know. I don't really know what to think about it. I enjoyed it. I want to read more from this author. I don't know if she's going to be the author for me, but I am intrigued. This was one of those stories that I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but it still had me like intrigued enough to keep turning the pages. I really wanted to know what was going on and finish it. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but I do want to read more from this author. Then I had another buddy read. I buddy read The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker with my friend Ashley from Read Like Ash and Yvette from Lee Grace Adores. Both of them are over on Instagram. Definitely check them out. They are some sweet ladies, some of my best friends. They are amazing. We read this together. This is a romance book. I will say that I'm kind of disappointed by this one. and it's just little stuff, but it became big for me. This story is following our main character, Calla, and Calla and her mom live in Toronto. So this does take place some in Canada, but also mainly in Alaska, which I thought was a really interesting book setting. I'd never read any books about Alaska before, so I found like learning about this community and their culture was very interesting. That was probably my favorite part of the story, was the Alaskan setting. But Calla and her mom are from Toronto. They used to live in Alaska where Calla's dad is, but they're estranged at this point. But she finds out that her dad is sick, so she needs to go home to see him. She hasn't seen him in years and years and years. Their relationship has just not been very good. So she goes home to see him, and she has that relationship going on. And then she also ends up having a little relationship with Jonah, who is a bush pilot. And yeah, so that was like a really interesting concept as well, just like learning about Alaskan bush pilots and just, again, how Alaskans live their lives. It is very different than what you would expect. So, or I don't know what I expected. I didn't know what to expect. It's just different than what I know in the States, like in the connected states, I guess. So this was a good story of like family and friendship, and like just the relationships in the story were really good. I did like the characters some, but they annoyed me for a really big part of the story. Miscommunication annoyed me. Two other things that really annoyed me were the smut and the cursing. There was like a lot of use of GD, which I don't understand why that has to be used at all. And I'm not saying like, I'm not somebody who can't handle cussing. I can handle like a few cuss words here and there, but it's just like when it's excessive or when it's like the big ones, I guess, I just don't really prefer it. So I did like this story. I do think a lot of people would like this story. It is the first book in a series. It's a trilogy, but I think there's also like a Christmas novella in there between books 2 and 3. I think most people would really, really like this book. I've had it on my TBR for a long time. There's just something that's always called to me for this book, for me to pick this book up. But I was left a little disappointed. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. 3 stars is a good rating for me, but that doesn't mean I'm not disappointed that it's not a 5. I hope that makes sense when I'm giving these ratings. But it just wasn't my favorite. I couldn't give it a 5 because there were points where I felt like the story was too long. I didn't like the things I mentioned before. And yeah, overall, it was good. I think a lot of people will like it. It just wasn't my favorite. Okay, another buddy read. This may be my most disappointing book of the year. However, don't listen to me because you're probably going to love this unless anything bothers you that I'm about to mention. But Youth of You by Jessica Joyce. A buddy read this with my friend Jordan. We both DNF'd it. I DNF'd it 73%. I'm so upset that I didn't like this book more. Like, this was one of my most anticipated books of the year. It has the cutest concept for a story. And the author, this is her debut book. I feel like she's about to fly off the romance shelves because she's a great author. But there are some things in this book that I was so mad that she included. I'm like, it was completely unnecessary to the story and you just ruined it for me. So let me tell you what it's about. Okay, so you have Noelle Shepherd and Theo Spencer are the main characters in the story, along with Paul, who is the cutest little grandpa in the world. So Noelle, she is going through her grandmother's things. Her grandmother's passed away. Her grandfather had already passed away years before. And she was really, really close to her grandmother, which I can relate to because I'm also really, really close with mine. So she's going through a box of her old things and she finds this picture of her grandmother with a man that is not her grandfather, and that she's like obviously really in love with him. I think she may find a letter with it, but it was just like the cutest thing. And so she wants to figure out who this man is in the picture with her grandmother. So she posts a video on TikTok trying to find the man in the photo. And she does end up finding him. It just so turns out that he is the grandfather of her high school nemesis, Theo. And so they end up meeting up. She meets Paul, and Paul is telling her about his relationship with her grandmother. And he has all these letters, but he says he's going to give them to her in pieces. Well, in all of this, Paul also has a map of the honeymoon that her grandmother and him were going to take. So they were planning to elope, get married, go on this like road trip honeymoon. And Noelle decides that she really wants to go on this trip. Well, Paul wants to go too, but his condition is he wants to bring Theo. This, oh gosh, y'all, this really just set up to be such a cute story where you find out about her grandmother and her first love. Paul is the sweetest grandpa character. Like, if you love old people characters in books, like, I loved him so much. And he was also trying to ship Noelle and Theo, which in my head, I can't remember their names because they call each other by their last name. So Spencer is what she calls him, and then Shep is what he calls her because her last name is Shepherd. And I love that. That's one thing I do love about romances that I didn't realize is when they call each other by their last name, which is a very high school thing to do. And they were like nemesis in high school. But it is kind of like a nemesis to lovers, enemies to lovers romance. You've got a road trip romance. You've got like I said, the cute little grandmother story. You've got letters. You've got banter. You've got all this sweet stuff encompassed in the story, and you've got a really beautiful cover. There's just so many good things. But from the very get-go, there was so much heavy cussing. So you got a story that is so sweet in nature that is ruined by the excessive amount of cussing that doesn't make sense to come out of these characters' mouths. They don't seem the type to just, it was very misplaced. It just did not feel like it fit with the story. And it was, there was like really big cuss words in here. GD was in here. The F word was in here multiple times. Like, it was just a lot. Like, it was a lot. And like I said, I've read plenty of books with cursing. So please don't get me wrong. Like, it's not just like, oh, they said a couple little words. No, it was too much. Then the whole like second half of this book that I started going through after the 50% mark, I was so upset because I had to skip 3 chapters that was like all smut. And I just don't understand. I will never understand. Like, I'm not a smut reader. And I know you guys have seen me read smut earlier this year and get more accustomed to it. But like, I'm just not reading it anymore. I don't want to read it. I don't know, maybe I can deal with like one scene and it be tasteful, but smut is not done tasteful. I think there's a reason why it's called smut and it sounds like that word, because it's not tasteful. I don't like it. If you like it, that's your prerogative. I'm not judging you, but I do not like it. I don't feel like it's tastefully done in romance books. It's just icky and it doesn't make any sense. Like, I just don't like it. So needless to say, that stuff, plus there was like a whole chapter in here where they go to a psychic, and the whole chapter was about them going to a psychic, talking about their futures and like their match with each other. And I was like, why was that necessary? Like, completely displaced or misplaced in the story. So I DNF this at 73%. Again, I think that the majority of BookTube and Bookstagram is going to love this and eat this up, and Jessica Joyce is going to be a new favorite romance author for people. And I really wish that she was that for me, because again, love the story, but those elements that I mentioned that I didn't like really ruined it for me. I'm not rating this book. I'm very disappointed in it. So yeah, that's my rant. That is my rant. Let's move on to some happier things. Well, maybe a little bit. We've got a couple more like not happy things, but just like still not quite my favorites. Okay, I'm going to talk about these 2 really quick. So the first one is Murder Off the Books by Tamara Berry. This is the 3rd book in the By the Book mystery series. You guys have heard me talk about this plenty of times. Buried in a Good Book is one of my favorite books of all time. I love this series. It is my favorite cozy mystery series. The first 2 books were 5 stars. Unfortunately, this one was not a 5. It was a 3. But it was still good, and I'm still going to continue on in the series. I just was not super thrilled with the way that this story went. It didn't feel as happy as the other stories. There's a lot of things and characters that just made me mad, that annoyed me. I didn't like, this one has like a podcast element, and I don't think I like that in books. So I didn't like that inclusion. I didn't like the way the story went. I didn't like how Tess and the detective, what is his name? Sheriff Boyd. I didn't like how their interactions were in this book, because it didn't seem very true to their interactions with each other in previous books. So this one was just a little bit different. I did still enjoy it, but it just definitely felt a little different than the other 2 books. So if you don't know what this book series is about, it's about Tess Harrow, who is a thriller author, and her and her daughter, Gertie, go to live in a cabin in Winthrop, Washington that belonged to her late grandfather. And there's different murder mysteries that ensue from there, but I love it. I especially love the banter between Tess and Sheriff Boyd. It is my favorite thing, which is not something I would expect to want or like in a cozy mystery, but I love it for them. There is a little old lady named Edna who pops up here and there in the book, and I honestly want her to get her own little like novella, because she's precious and I want to see things from her perspective. She's just such a hoot. I love her. I love Gertie. I love the other characters in this book. It's just a really good series. Unfortunately, this one just wasn't my favorite in the series. It's 3-star. Kind of felt like middle book syndrome, but I'm really excited still to continue with this one. It's still probably my favorite cozy series. And then the last book I want to talk about before I get to the 2 that were like my favorites for the month is The Series of Unfortunate Events, The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. I do want to get through all 13 of these books. I read the first few in middle school, and I've watched the movie with Jim Carrey, which I liked but didn't love, but then I loved the Netflix series with Neil Patrick Harris. It's phenomenal. You should check it out. It's very like in the vein of this book and like the tone. It's just phenomenal. So I wanted to read these. I do think I'm a little old to be reading these. I do read middle grade, you guys know that. But I think these are a little younger middle grade, so I don't know that I'm going to like love them. But I did give this one 4 stars. I do think I gave it a little higher of a rating than my feeling at the time when I read it. But I listened to the audio, which is narrated by Tim Curry, I believe is his name. And I know him. Like, he's been in a lot of stuff. I can't remember his name, but I think it's Tim Curry. He narrated it. I really wish that Patrick Warburton maybe narrated it. He's the one who plays Lemony Snicket and narrates him in the show. He just, to me, embodies, like, he is Lemony Snicket to me. But I did like Tim Curry's narration. I did like this book. It just follows the Baudelaire orphans who just have a series of unfortunate events that happen in their life that starts with them becoming orphans. Their house burned down in a fire. They lost their parents. And Count Olaf is trying to steal their family fortune. So that's basically the story. And it is a series of unfortunate events. There's no happy ending here. So just so you know, don't go into this thinking there's happy endings. But I don't know. There's something about Lemony Snicket's writing that I really enjoy. He breaks the fourth wall, which some people don't love, but I think it's very interesting. So definitely a good recommendation. Now we're going to get to my favorites. So I was saying that Buried in a Good Book is my favorite cozy series, and I still think that it is. But it has been given a run for its money by Crime and Poetry by Amanda Flower. This book took me by utter surprise. I was not really super interested in reading this book. I got it because some friends had read it and enjoyed it. This is the first book in the Magical Bookshop mystery. Y'all, this book, if you just need a place that feels like home, a book that feels like home, that just makes you feel so cozy and happy and content with like everything in your life, like this book, it was just so magical and sweet. And I love the characters in this. I love the mystery in this. I love Grandma Daisy. She was just the best. And you have this cute little magical bookshop. It was perfect. Like, this is everything I want in a classic cozy mystery. Buried in a Good Book is more of like a modern cozy mystery. This is more, I feel like, in the vein of a classic. I loved it. I loved it so much. It takes place just outside of Niagara Falls in the village of Cascade Springs, New York, which is the home of a magical bookstore where one young woman, her feisty grandmother, and a curious tuxedo cat team up to keep crime between the pages. There's also a talking crow. I just love this. I don't know what to say about it except that you need to read it if you like cozy mysteries and haven't already. Definitely going to continue in the series, and I definitely want to check out more from Amanda Flower. This was a 5-star. And the last book this month that I really loved was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. It has been ages since I've read a Riley Sager and loved it. The last couple I read were Survive the Night and Final Girls, and I DNF'd both of those. The two of my favorites by Riley Sager are The Last Time I Lied and Home Before Dark, and now The Only One Left. So I don't really know how they rank at this point because it's been a while since I read the first two, but this is definitely up there. I love the gothic vibes of the story. I love that there's this house crumbling off a cliff, like it's really old, and you have those coastal spooky vibes, and it's stormy, and the house is tilting, and you've got this woman who can't speak or move or talk or anything. Like, she can only speak by like tapping to say yes or no. Let me tell you what this is about because I'm kind of just giving you vibes right now, but it's about Lenora Hope, and I love the little rhyme that they put with it at the beginning. So like, let me read that. At 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope, stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It wasn't me, Lenora said, but she's the only one not dead. So this is a very Lizzie Borden-esque type story where you have our main character, Lenora, or one of our main characters, Lenora, who has murdered her whole family very much like Lizzie Borden did. And she's still alive, and there's a girl named Kit who is a caretaker that comes to take care of Lenora, and she finds out like Lenora's story. Lenora wants to tell her, so she starts typing on this typewriter, and she wants to tell Kit what actually happened all these years ago. This is told in multiple timelines, multiple perspectives. Is it multiple perspectives? Well, yeah, because you get the typewriter and then you get Kit's perspective. I love this. There's so many things. There's so many things. The gothic atmosphere, the coastal atmosphere. I love the typewritten letters and the mystery. Stories like this are so good. This is like within the same vein as kind of Home Before Dark vibes, Verity vibes. There's like people walking around like you don't know what's going on in this house. It's very spooky. All of the characters, so there's not really likable characters in this book, but they're not so unlikable. Like the Guest List by Lucy Foley had such unlikable characters. Like I did not like that book very much. It was just all unlikable characters. And I don't want to read a book with all unlikable characters, but these were like intriguing and interesting enough that I was like, okay, I don't like you, but I like you. So it was really, really good. So many twists. So like there was like 20 twists, I swear, at the end of this book. And some people like complained about that, didn't like it, but I loved it. I loved it. I did see a couple coming, but overall, like this didn't make me gasp, but I loved all the twists and I loved the story. And some people said it felt slower paced, which I think it does a little, but like not really, because it was really good and I really like this book. Like this is my kind of book. So 5 stars. I'm so glad I found another Riley Sager I liked. Definitely want to read another of his soon. The only one I have that I have not read yet is The House Across the Lake, so I may be reading that one soon. It may just be getting put on my August TBR, even though it wasn't there before, because I really like this book. So those were like my 2 favorites of the month, and my 2 5 stars. And that, my friends, we're finally at the end, is all the books that I read in the month of July. I did have some disappointing reads. I had some interesting reads, but I did have a couple of winners. So I cannot believe, like I read 16, well I didn't fully read 16 books because I have 3 that I'm still like going through, but that's a lot of books. And I definitely can tell why I'm feeling kind of slumpy right now in my reading. But yeah, you'll have to let me know down in the comments if I like piqued your interest in any of these, whether it was in a good or bad way. Let me know what your favorite book that you read in July was, because I always need like good books to add to my TBR. I'm becoming more accustomed to like what I like and don't like in books. I think you guys can see that now. So definitely make sure when you recommend me books that they are within my realm of comfort. Not that I don't like to read outside my comfort zone sometimes, but there's also some things that like I'm just not going to get past. So this has definitely been an interesting reading month for me. I hope you enjoyed hearing me chat and rant about all the books that I read. If you made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave a heart emoji, because I read a lot of romance this month. Whatever heart you want to leave is fine with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, friends.